AMD is set to report earnings this week, and this could not only lead to explosive growth in the price of AMD stock itself, but also in semiconductor stocks across the board, specifically stocks like Micron, Nvidia, and SK Hynix. Now, in this video, we're going to talk about what we expect to see from AMD's earnings, not only from a financial perspective, but from a signal as far as what the company says with forward guidance, as we've seen that has massive impacts on the stock prices. We're also going to look at signals we've seen in the market that will show us as to what we think is going to happen with earnings. Do we think AMD is going to beat expectations, which they actually had the last few quarters? Are there signals out there that are showing that they might actually underperform? And what is big money doing when it comes to AMD? Have institutions been buying the stock the last few days leading up to earnings? Has retail been buying the stock, or have they been selling? And how could all of this impact the price of Micron, SK Hynix, Nvidia, and AMD itself? Guys, please like and subscribe. If you've been watching the channel, personally, I think AMD and Micron stocks specifically are set to double in the near future. We've talked about that a lot on this channel. Let me know in the comments if you agree. And really quickly, I want to point out that the $1 million portfolio was up about 1% this week, close to 1.2, close to all-time highs. Let me know how you guys are doing in the market this week as well. And as always, if you guys want to see what stocks I'm buying in the $1 million portfolio, what's in the portfolio, what I'm buying, when I'm buying, and why I'm buying, click that link below. Join my private stock group. It's only 15 bucks. You get a 7-day free trial. I mean, come on, guys. If I could pay someone 15 bucks when I was first starting out to learn how a millionaire actually invests, I would do it in a heartbeat. But go ahead and click that link if you guys want to join. AMD this Tuesday is set to report earnings. So let's dive into what we expect here as far as expectations. Now, revenue is expected to come in at $11.31 billion for the quarter, which would be an increase of 47% year over year. Net income, which is that bottom line profit, $1.75 billion is the expectation, which would be almost an exact doubling of profits from a year ago. Now, if we look over the last few quarters, guys, they have overperformed for the last 3 quarters. If you look at Q3 2025, they beat, pretty healthily there. You see a $9.4 billion was the actual revenue. They expected 8.5, so that was, a huge overperform there. Overperformed the last couple of quarters as well. And now they're expecting a quarter of 11.3 billion, okay? Now, if we look at net profit, and I just want to point out, that is a pretty steep increase there, right? From quarter over quarter, Q1 9.9 to Q2 11.3. They're expecting significant growth, right? Significant growth just quarter over quarter. That's almost 2 billion. It's about 1.5 billion quarter over quarter, right? So if they underperform, obviously the stock is probably going to take a hit like we saw with SK Hynix. If they overperform, you could see explosive moves to the upside, not just for AMD, but for other semiconductor stocks like Nvidia, Micron, SK Hynix as well. Net profit, they are expecting net profit to go up huge from 1.2 billion to 1.7 billion just quarter over quarter. That is a massive increase, right? That's huge for net profits. Earnings per share expected to go from 0.7 billion to 1 billion as well. So they're expecting some massive growth here, right? And they expect this to come in really, really hot. Now, what are the signals we're seeing here? Do we expect AMD to beat these expectations or underperform with these expectations? Well, if you take a look at the screen here, folks, hyperscalers have all been sending one single message the last couple of weeks. One message: the AI trade is far from over. And we've had a lot of selling the last couple of weeks. If you look at the chart here, Micron stock just in the last month is down 15%. Nvidia stock, I think, was holding up a little stronger itself. But a lot of these chip stocks have been getting hit hard in the last month, right? The market has been skeptical as to whether or not this AI trade can continue, right? But we had Google have earnings this last week. We had Meta. We had Amazon. We had Microsoft. All 4 of them pointed to one thing. One, The majority of them are already monetizing AI services, which bodes well for them to continue to invest in chips, except Meta, they're still burning money hand over fist. But the other ones are already building out huge revenues with their cloud services, and Meta is trying to create their own cloud service, obviously, to start generating revenue as well. But two, they specifically said that they expect this to continue for years, okay? And the market can only take so much good news until these prices rubber band to the upside. Samsung also came up speaking about signals. Remember, we're talking about signals as to what we think will happen with earnings. What's happening in the market that's going to lead us to believe that AMD is either going to overperform or underperform. Hyperscalers obviously sent a massive positive bullish signal for AMD and semiconductor chips this last week. Samsung, a semi-chip itself, a company itself, said that they expect memory shortage to worsen through 2027 and last into 2028 as well, right? And when that happened, you might have heard all of these chip stock prices boomed. I think we had, Micron up like 10% on the day. We had some companies up 20 to 25% on the single day, right? So these are signals we've been seeing in the market that's showing that demand continues to be strong. Supply for these chips continues to be very, very little compared to demand. And this is a signal showing us that there's a really good chance that AMD is going to overperform with these earnings like they have the last few quarters. Now, nothing's guaranteed. Obviously, it's possible they could underperform. That could happen anytime, right? You can't really predict short-term financials. But what you can do is put yourself in a position as an investor, position yourself not only to capture that long-term growth, but also to be able to withstand that volatility, right? That's something we've talked about on the channel. I am building out my position in these chip stocks in the $1 million portfolio, but at the same time, I understand that there's going to be massive volatility. Now we've seen, companies like Micron go down 10% in a day and then go up 15% in a day. This volatility is insane. And the majority of retail investors, they can't handle this volatility, right? This is why I'm here to show you guys, as someone who has a $1 million portfolio, what I've done to build the portfolio to that size and what I'm doing to build it to $10 million, which is the goal. So you guys can follow along with that again if you want to join the private group. Now, what is big money, institutional money doing before earnings, right? Are they selling the stock, expecting a dip? Are they buying a stock, expecting to get ready, for that price to go up and capture that growth? Well, quite frankly, guys, institutions, if you look on your left, extra large orders over the last few days are mostly red in a pretty major way, right? So extra large, these are institutions. And on the right here, you'll see small, which is retail. They've been mostly selling as well in a major way. And that really correlates with AMD's price over the last few days, right? AMD, I think it's down about 10%, 10 to 15% for the month. So we've been seeing a lot of selling across the board, right? It's not just retail. Retail and institutions both have been selling kind of, in a synchronized way. And that reflects in the stock price as we've seen AMD go down huge, about 10 to 15% in the last month as well. Now, does that mean, that they know what they're doing and we should be selling the stock before, earnings and the price crashes? Or have they been feeding into the psychology of short-term bad news, right? Essentially, the markets have been taking a breath and asking themselves, the main customers for these chip stocks are hyperscalers, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple. Can these companies continue to justify this spend in the short term without seeing an ROI? And as that sentiment has been kind of shifting towards that way, you've seen people selling. And I wanted to point this out because it's not just retail that's selling, it's institutions as well. One thing you guys have to realize, guys, is a couple of things. One, the majority of retail investors don't know how to build a portfolio to $1 million, right? They don't understand the technical analysis, they don't understand the fundamental analysis, and they don't understand, most importantly, the psychology when it comes to building a portfolio, right? You think I've gotten to a $1 million portfolio without withstanding massive volatility to the upside and the downside? Absolutely, guys, absolutely over the years, and I will continue to do so. But the portfolio and the positions that I build out are done so in a way to withstand that volatility, right? And one thing you have to understand is when you think of institutions as well, so you have retail they don't, for the most part, really understand the psychology of how to withstand this volatility. So they sell when it's low and they buy when it's high. Institutions, they have a different set of problems they have to deal with, right? So when you think of institutions, they're basically salesmen. So when you have a wealth manager, dealing with clients, and then you see a stock price plummeting, those clients start picking up the phone and say, hey, what's going on with AMD? We have AMD, but it's crashing. So those institutions have a lot of pressure to go ahead and sell to make those customers happy, right? So it's almost like the institutions, to a large extent, they feed into that negative psychology from retail because retail is their customer, right? If that makes sense. So really the best thing that I've learned over the years is to manage my own money, right? Because when I give my money to a wealth manager, he's putting me, when stocks go up, he says, oh, the customers want to go in the stocks that go up, so I'm going to put them in those stocks. When stocks crash, he says, well, customers are getting scared. I'm going to sell these to make my customers happy. It's a little bit of a simplified example, but I'm just trying to point out here that institutions are not immune to the psychology behind retail buying and selling at the wrong time. They are absolutely not immune. And trust me, this is something I've learned over the years as I've built out that $1 million portfolio. Now, how does this relate to Micron, Nvidia, and other chip stocks across the board? Well, guys, if unless you've been living under a rock, you've seen that these chips, to a large extent, have been moving in unison, right? When you hear bad signals in the market, everything goes down 5-10% in a day. When you hear bullish signals in the market, everything goes up 5% in a day versus going down when you hear bearish signals. So to a large extent, we're dealing with a market that is unsure with what to do with these chip stocks, especially companies like Micron and SK Hynix. So you have the more, established companies from a valuation standpoint, like AMD and Nvidia, relatively hold up a little bit better and are priced at a more of a premium than companies like Micron, right? So if you look on your screen here, we have a forward PE comparison. So price to earnings based on the next 12 months. You have AMD priced at a 68 forward price to earnings. Relatively strong valuation. Broadcom at a 30, Nvidia at a 19, which would be considered like a very healthy, very normal forward PE. And then you have Micron at a 6.6. Now, because of this, and I am building out AMD as a position in the portfolio in the coming weeks, but because of this is why I'm focusing on Micron. I mean, look at this forward PE, guys, 6.6. And the reason they say, it's trading so cheaply is because the cyclicality of the chip sector, right? But I just showed you guys that we have Micron trading at a much cheaper premium compared to other chip stocks when they all have the same relative cyclical issues, right? All of these chip stocks have historically been cyclical. Nvidia, for the most part, they used to make these GPUs for video game consoles. That was cyclical as well. If the economy was tanking, no one's really buying Xboxes and PlayStations. They're just not. And they'd have that cyclical issue as well. As soon as the market realized that Nvidia was going to be a major long-term player in the long-term AI infrastructure build-out, that PE started going up and that stock price started going up, rubber banding to the upside. And that, I think, is what we're going to see with Micron as well. So over time, the market can only take so much good news. AMD is already priced relatively well. I do think it could double in the next, let's say, 6 to 12 months easily. That's kind of what I'm looking at here. And Micron, I think, easily has that upside. Again, look at this forward PE, guys. Even if Micron just goes to a 12 forward PE, now we're doubled, right? And the market could easily make that decision at any time, right? We could rubber band in a couple of weeks up to a double on Micron. Personally, we've seen it. That's what I think. We've seen it go down 15% in the month. We've seen it go up 600% for the year, as far as I think 900% for the year at the top. Obviously, it's crashed massively. I believe about 33%. But this is what I'm looking at, guys. I'm looking at earnings for AMD. I'm looking for the signals to see whether or not we think AMD is going to beat on earnings. Personally, I do expect it to beat. And I am looking to start nibbling on AMD stock and add it to the $1 million portfolio as well. And then I'm looking at what impact is this going to have on the semiconductor space across the board, right? We've seen semiconductors just over the last week, Nvidia down 3%, Micron down 10%, AMD down 8.5%, Intel down 2.5%. really semis have been taking a hit for the last week as they tend to move together to a large extent, right? So these are the signals, guys. This is what's happening as far as institutions and retail, whether or not they're buying the stock or selling the stock. These are the expected earnings, and in my opinion, they're going to beat. In my opinion, we have a history of them beating for the last few quarters. We have signals pointing, everything pointing that the AI trade is not over. Valuations will continue to go up. And again, I do think this will have a massive impact on Nvidia and Micron shares as well. So guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think AMD and Micron and other chip stocks could go up huge after earnings? And do you think they could go up even doubling in the coming months? Let me know in the comments. Let me know if you guys are buying or selling before or after earnings. And again, guys, if you guys want to see what is in the $1 million portfolio, what stocks I'm buying, when I'm buying them, and why I'm buying them, join that group there. It's 15 bucks, guys. You get a 7-day free week trial. You can try it for free. And you can even chat with me personally. I will answer any question you have. When I was getting started, if I could, let's say when I had a, $1,000 portfolio, if I could speak to someone that had $1 million portfolio, even just out of curiosity, I think 15 bucks would have been worth it, right? So let me know in the comments if you guys are interested in joining the group. Let me know what you guys are doing when it comes to chip stocks this week. And hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you on the next video.